Hello, how you all doing? Welcome back. Hello, how my beautiful queens and house of kings doing this evening? How you all doing? Welcome or welcome back to another day in a new video. So this would be like a little server mini edition. I'm just gonna explain to you all like the difference between a banquet server versus a food server. You all to see like in the beginning of this video where I kind of inserted like some little clips of me working like probably in previous vlogs, and I just kind of want to incorporate in the video to give you all a better understanding of what the difference between a food server versus a restaurant server versus a banquet server. Okay, so with the restaurant server, when you working in a restaurant, well, where I work at, you basically when you first come in the morning, you start off, you count your draw out. Your draw supposed to be at a certain amount of money. Then you make your coffee. Normally, I make 3 pots of coffee a day. We have regular roast, decaf, and a lighter roast, which is under Starbucks. Also, I make sure after I get through making my coffee, I pour it out my milk, the creamers, which will be used for like if someone purchased like just a regular coffee of the day, which is the 3 coffees that I just named. Now, if they want like a specialty coffee, I usually have to make sure I cut the machine on, the little espresso machine. I usually have to have a sanitizer bucket on the side, so once I get through steaming that milk, I wipe it off. I hit this button to kind of, clean it out. Also, I make sure I wipe my tables down real good. In the mornings, we usually have to put the salt and pepper shakers out on the tables. In the nighttime, when my shift over with, at the end of the day, I have to pull the salt and pepper shakers out the shift after my shift ends, because at night they usually put out these little candles more for like a more soft vibe, or I say more of more of a I'm trying to see how I can describe it. Like they put like these little light fixtures on the table, so more of like a calm, relaxing vibe, I'm gonna say. What else? We usually have to pull out trash in the mornings. Well, I always make sure I pull trash, I sweep. I usually like to make sure I'm vacuum the areas where people might have ate food at to dine in. Sometimes people, when they tend to eat breakfast, I have seen it plenty of times, like far as breakfast burritos, they usually are the crumbs. They usually are like, waste of food, surfaces on the floor. So normally I have like a little vacuum where I clean the area up. Also, what else? Also, I like to make sure the little fridge when we're making the specialty coffees like the Starbucks, lattes, cappuccinos, and all the other things of that nature. We have a little fridge at the bottom underneath where we make the espresso drinks. I always like to make sure I have milk already in stock. We normally carry like I normally put 3 gallons of we don't carry whole milk. 3 gallons of the 2%, 3 gallons of the low fat milk, which is the skim. And then I also like to keep maybe 2 things or 3 things of half and half in the fridge for chilling, because sometimes we do have a a coffee pitcher that we directly put half and half out anyway at the end of the bar. So if someone purchases a specialty coffee, they can add they half and half in there themselves. What else? I always like to make sure I'm stocked on cups. I keep me enough cups when I feel like I'm getting pretty low. I like to keep plenty of cups because coffee pretty much sells. If don't no food sell, coffee gonna sell automatically. And I also like to make sure I'm stocked on napkins. What else? Napkins, silverware. We have like plastic silverware for to go. Like keep me some to go bags. We have like a little bag divider where we have these little brown to go bags where we keep up. I always make sure I'm stocked on that. So it's like basically when I work, I try to make work a little easier on myself. I like to always make sure I'm prepping and have enough stock for myself, for my sake. Normally at the end of the shift, I usually have to count out, I print out a receipt, which is we usually have to print out 3 receipts. It'd be like a report showing like how much we might have sold that day in food or coffee or whatever, or just in general how much the restaurant made that day. You usually have to print off 3 of those, and you have to print out the tip report, like 3 of the tip reports. So basically, it just give you an overall what you make. You have to report that back to the hotel, and then you also have to make sure you're responsible for counting your register back out. So when your register started out with, it need to be right back at what it started out with. That goes for both shifts. Now, as far as with the banquet server, I usually have like a BEO. It's a piece of paper. It'll tell you how many people that's about to dine. I mean, tell you how many people that's going to be attending a certain event. And the cooks, they normally make sure they're cooking enough food for that event. So basically, what I do, I normally, as I'm watching the cooks prep, like if it's something as simple as like something I can do, I use kind of like, if it's like, because majority of the times, every function that we have had or every function I ever worked as a server, it always gonna be like a salad. Like you're gonna have a salad bar or a salad on the buffet. Period. So I always like to pour my dressings. It always be just 2 main dressings, ranch, balsamic. It depends on what establishment you working at. Some I just do um, a lemon vinaigrette dressing with a ranch. Then what I do with my BO, I normally if I'm preparing, like say for instance if I had a function the day before and I have some extra time, I always like to polish my silverware, rolled it up. We have these little black napkins. They're cloth napkins. They're reusable. So after they get used, reuse. I usually have to take them back to the laundry where they get washed and be ready for another event. But I always like to make sure I'm steaming, polishing my silverware up in hot water real good. Now I also redo this in the restaurant. But the thing is, between the restaurant and the banquet department, the restaurant we have paper napkins that we're using. So the napkins that the guests use with those they dispose, like they can throw those away. But the silverware must come back and get washed and reuse another paper napkin. But with the banquet server is where you roll silverware up. You don't have like this little attachment that you stick to it to make you just roll it up as neat as possible and like lay it flat in the basket. Also with the banquets, you're responsible for setting up like the events where you maybe have to set the buffets up. With me, I like to run my plates through the dishwasher if I have extra time. Sometimes if I don't, I take a little nice clean cloth where we have in the restaurant, wet it real good, and just go back over each plate, wipe from front to back, making sure. I always like to check my plates because at one time there was someone, a guest. I have experienced this in 2 different hotels where they took the plate was clean on the front side, but when they flipped it over, it had food surfaces. So I try to, be aware of that. But like I say, that's not of my fault. Sometimes if depending on where you work at, they might have a dishwasher, or sometimes the dishwasher, the machine might not pick up all the food. So I just learned that it's best to, when you get ready and wash your dishes, make sure you spraying it real good, or take like a little scrubbing pad and kind of, scrub that food out. Because sometimes food can be stuck on, place like probably from previous food, and then nobody know, and it basically still there. Also, you have shafer dishes you put out which keep the food hot, and we always make sure we have water. You gotta have water in them. You also have to have sternos up underneath. So what I do before the function begin, I always like to light my the shafer dishes up like an hour or maybe 30. I would say maybe 30 minutes before it's time to put the food out on the buffet. That makes sure it get the food good and hot, even though the food coming out hot. But when you have the shafer dishes already lit, it that water with that moisture, it helps make the food stay fresh, good and hot. I had to learn that too because I was wondering, like when I was working, they like, you gotta make sure you light the safer dishes up at a certain time. So yeah. What else? Also, with the banquet service, a lot different. Well, they're both similar in some way, but like I say, with the banquets, I consider bank was a little bit more of a little bit more to do far as like your serve your positions, because you got to make sure you got to break down everything. You know, you got to set up. You still going, you know, picking up people plates and stuff, going around asking people if they finish eating. You take their plate up. Pretty much what you would do in a restaurant. But sometimes in some cases with banquets, sometimes people might not always be ready for you to pick their plate up. They might want to go back for seconds. Versus working in a restaurant, it ain't no seconds unless they're going to purchase more food. That's the only way they get seconds. I'm trying to figure out what else. Yeah, like with both positions, with banquet, there's no gratuity. So I guess like if a guest give you a tip, you're obligated to taking it, but there's no gratuity in banquets. The restaurant, you do get tips. They post that on, you know, they'll be on your paycheck. But as far as the difference, like I say, they both similar in some way, but it's like I feel like bank was a little bit more work than working in versus working in the restaurant. Like especially the restaurant I work at, it's not a hard job. It's not as hard as it might seem to be. But like I say, when it come down to banquets and you got to set up for these functions, it's a lot more work. Like you really have to be. It's like it's no non-stop movement. It's like you just constantly move. Me doing it, like I say, for over 10 years now, it's like you constantly moving. So that's just pretty much what kind of been helping me. And then, like I say, I always keep the BEO on me to make sure I got everything that's on that paper. I mark it all. Sometimes, like now with banquets, like and now banquets is now with banquets. Sometimes depending on what kind of function it is, they do probably might want some coffee. So I always make a pot of coffee. It come in a different the restaurant equipment and the banquet equipment is separate. It's totally different. So the banquet equipment coffee pitcher jugs is about, you know, a little bigger than the ones that we use in the restaurant. So I start off with, you know, maybe a decaf or regular. Sometimes they might want iced tea. I, you know, make some tea and a water station, unless they paying for it, like on a consumption where they get the bottles of water. That's different. But if they don't have that on the BEO, I usually just set out a pitcher of water for them. But I also learned when it come down to that iced tea is to find now, like I had to study my groups, because you have a lot of people. In some cases, they be wanting sweet tea. Then you might have somebody in the bunch don't want sweet tea. So what I figured out, I noticed like with corporate groups, I don't make sweet tea. I just put the sugar, like put the caddies out for them and let them add their own their own sugar. And with the family reunions, I kind of sense that they might want sweet tea, but I'm also learning because the last function I did, maybe a couple weeks ago, they had this group had sweet tea. This group had sweet tea. It was like a corporate group. I didn't put no sugar out, but they did request a fruit punch. Now the fruit punch was already sweet, but I added ice. I said from now on, I think I'm gonna stop adding the ice in the, in the like with fruit punch. I might need to do that too for the tea because it kind of water it down a little bit. So I just said for now, because normally I have a container with like ice and a little scoop for them to put their own ice in. So I'm just gonna kind of cut back on putting ice in the tea in the fruit punch or sweet tea because it kind of dilute it and make it taste a little watered down. But like I say, some of them was drinking it anyway. But yeah, but I think they're gonna end. That's gonna complete, the differences between the food server versus a restaurant server. And you all have a great day.